Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today's episode, I want to talk about conspiracy theories and the psychology of conspiracy theories more than the reality. And I've been reading this letter that Jung wrote back in 1957 about the phenomenon of UFOs, which was obviously a fairly recent occurrence at the time. And it's an interesting turn of phrase in it. He says, unfortunately, given the beauty almost of the psychological aspect of it, it seems to be true. So he dug into the literature of UFOs, and he could kind of see that there had been radar occurrences, and maybe it was true, but he thought it was a shame because the psychological aspect of it was almost so pure and so fascinating. And so I kind of want to dig into that a little bit in maybe a series on conspiracy theories, and not to question the reality or unreality, but more to dig into the psychology of the conspiracies themselves. So today I thought I'd start with a popular conspiracy theory by a man called David Icke, which has become quite prevalent and almost a caricature of conspiracy theories in general, and that is the idea that the elites of the world are shape-shifting lizards or shape-shifting reptiles. And I remember being in Australia about 5 or 6 years back and picking up a magazine one day in a shop, and it was some kind of conspiracy magazine, and there was a story about the Queen, and the Queen of England being what she would have been mid-80s at the time, and this wasn't actually David Icke, this was just another conspiracy theorist, and she's talking about the Queen. One of her pastimes is to go into the wilds of Canada on horseback and to hunt humans and eat them. And that this is a thing that the royals do because Canada is part of the Commonwealth, so they have some sort of ownership or claim to that. And it just struck me as like, wow, I don't even know how you get to the point where you're writing that, you know? But without commenting too much on the truth, personally, I don't buy it, but psychologically, reading into this idea of the shape-shifting lizard as a conspiracy theory, I could see what the psychological component of it could be. And if you were willing to approach conspiracy theories in the same way that we approach religion quite often now, as not as a historical, literal thing, but as a symbolical thing, then what could that mean? And I think the case of the shape-shifting reptile is actually quite transparent and quite, it's symbolically, it's not something we might disagree with, given the zeitgeist of today. So what is the symbolism that I see in the shape-shifting reptile? Okay, so I guess the fundamental component to understand this is the 3 layers of the brain. So you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is the kind of the outer layer of the brain, which would have been developed in the last million years, and that's what makes humans different, because we've got such a massively developed neocortex, prefrontal cortex, and this is responsible for things like language, for logic, for creativity. So there's a lot of that, what makes us human. That classical question of what makes humans special. Well, that you can point to the prefrontal cortex generally as that. So you could call that the human brain or the primate brain because it's shared with our primate cousins, but we've just got a particularly overblown one. And the layer below that is the limbic brain. And the limbic brain is the mammalian brain. And it's got circuits like the amygdala and the reward circuit, and well, the reward circuit would be tied even deeper in, but this is the emotional brain, this is the social brain, and so this is the reacting to other people's emotions, the feelings of the different emotions that social animals need to cohere and to join into a tribe, and you can find all that in the mammalian brain. So that's the emotional brain of the limbic system. So we've got the human brain, or the prefrontal cortex / human / primate brain. You've got the limbic brain / mammalian brain, and then at the brainstem, at the cerebellum and the brainstem, so at the bottom of the brain, kind of at the back here, you've got what's called the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is our, you think of our lowest survival demands. So this goes beneath the social element of the brain, and we're in much more of a region of fight or flight here. So this is much more aggressive instincts, much more survival instincts, and do whatever you got to do to look after yourself. And so yeah, that's the self-preservation brain, and just a primal brain. And so if you want to think about society being structured according to different brain things, then you could look at the reptilian brain as being people who are only looking out for themselves, people who have no problem trampling on other people to get what they want, and very unsociable, selfish kind of brain. And that's where the reptilian brain would come in. So if you're serving your reptilian brain and just living by desire and whatever impulses that serve you, rather than looking at the mammalian level of the tribe or the prefrontal cortex level, which allows you to empathize with people and things, and it becomes very abstract but also very logical. There's a compassion up there for all things. So that's the potential of the prefrontal cortex. But if someone was just living in reptilian brain, then you'd say they were very selfish. You'd say that they're not a very sociable, there'd be an antisocial kind of person in a way. And so if you look at conspiracy theorists, the general targets, so in that article I mentioned, they were talking about royalty, and royalty going out hunting humans on the plains of Canada. Well, if you think of the theories of the Bilderbergs and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all this, and the conspiracy of this world order that is dominating and controlling in order to get more power, in order to get more money, in order to keep people down and create a 1984 dystopian kind of world, then that's a very, the image the conspiracy theorists have of that elite very much matches up with that reptilian brain projected out onto society. And so I think that might be a very interesting way of seeing the symbolism of the elite being shape-shifting lizards. And yeah, so like just to connect those dots to say, okay, I don't think I can believe that this is literally true. I don't think that there are aliens or shape-shifting lizards amongst us that are ruling the world. I think rather that you might have a symbolical point, that maybe these people aren't being very empathetic, these people aren't using their higher functions, and they're driven by more reptilian things, and they're only looking out for themselves. And that I might be able to agree with you on. I don't think that I do, but there's a point there where it opens up to reason. And this is something that happened with religion as well, where you look at from one religion to another. If you go looking at it literally and you go, well, I don't believe that at all. But you start to think of it symbolically, and there's just a glimmer there where you're like, okay, actually I can see how this could be good for life. I can see the deeper unconscious reason why this might be. And so that is my thought for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment if you have any feedback or insight to share. I'd love to hear from you. And otherwise I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.